On today's show, we'll discuss the Ottawa Senators' 4-2 loss in Dallas in a game the captain called embarrassing and unacceptable.
Good news is, Ross, they get a chance to bounce back tonight up against the St. Louis Blues.
Full preview of that coming up on today's Locked On Sens.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers who place a $5 bet will get started with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today is Friday, January 3rd, and Pilsy, I'm giving the Ottawa Senators a mulligan last night. Just win tonight and the noise will go away.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach, Ross. We got to have the mind of a goldfish on this one. Just forget that one. Like Captain Brady Tkachuk said in his post-game presser, thank goodness they have a game right after, because it allows them just to move on from that and rewrite the narrative of how they want this road trip to go. And St. Louis Blues, a very different opponent than the Dallas Stars. And I've got a much better feeling going into this game, especially, Ross, when you get it. Maybe embarrasses a little bit much, but when you don't have the performance you feel like you should in one game, that makes you hungrier to have an even better showing the next night. So I think this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, Travis Green said 70% of his lineup wasn't gone. Well, I would agree with that. You looked up front. Yeah. One thing I don't think will change at all is that top line. They've combined for both goals for Ottawa in a span of 24 seconds. Shane Pinto, Brady Tkachuk, and Ridley Gregg. But beyond that, it was a who's who of nothing last night offensively. And you look, I think Josh Norris in particular, we kind of brushed over on the postcast last night, but directly responsible for 2 goals against, in my opinion. Didn't pick up his guy on the back check on the game-tying goal, and then on the game-winning goal, loses the face-off, and then his man in front of the net. So I'd like to see a bounce back from Josh Norris tonight.
Well, Ross, hopefully if the Ottawa Senators are able to get on the power play 4 times like they were last night, Josh Norris can help them convert better than an 0 for 4. Mind you, up against one of the league's best penalty-killing units in Dallas, but if you want to see more from Josh Norris, likely it's going to happen on the power play.
How much of last night's game are you looking in the mirror at the Ottawa Senators versus just acknowledging that the Dallas Stars are one of the best teams in the league?
Yeah, a bit of both, Ross. If I'm looking in the mirror, I'm looking at the Sens, and then behind them is how good the Dallas Stars are.
Just like the Undertaker in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
In your shadow.
Because if you're the Ottawa Senators in that game, sure, you're like, we're up against a big-time Western Conference contender. They've been a consistent team. But then at the same time, you got to zoom in on the mirror, Ross, and look at yourself and be like, we had 13 shots.
And you led in the second period.
Yeah, you had a lead going into the second. Exactly. So, it's on you just as much as it is a hat tip to the opponent, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really did come down to special teams last night. Dallas gets that power play goal in the first period, and Ottawa got 3 shots total on 4 power plays. So hopefully everything's at the net tonight. I'm going to be looking at FanDuel at some player props for over shots on goal, but we also need to understand that Tim Stützle missed the morning skate yesterday and looked black and blue and all sorts of things according to TSN 1200. I think he's under the weather, and I don't think he's alone in that with this Ottawa Senators team. What a ridiculous run they're on right now. Not to beat a dead horse with this, but a road trip that has lasted 23 days when all is said and done, where they play 9 games with 3 sets of back-to-backs in there. Tonight finishes the 3rd back-to-back, and then they'll have a couple days before finishing the road trip in Detroit. So this is the 8th of 8 games against Western Conference teams on the road trip. And at worst, they're going 4-4. So that's kind of where they've done more than the bare minimum to stay in the race. But since they got a 5-meter push ahead in the race, you want them to hold on to that, which makes tonight an enormous test where they can really impress with all the, we'll touch on it at the end of the show, but everyone around Ottawa lost last night too.
Yep.
So all you lost was a game in hand on the Montreals and the teams that didn't play. But other than that, you wash your hands of it. You say, look, no harm, no foul. Let's just be better and more consistent throughout the game. I thought they had stretches where they were good last night early in the second period and late in the first too.
Yeah.
I know that Maryland had that huge save on Duchesne, which that would have swung the momentum earlier and tied it going into the intermission. But Pillsy, one thing I hope they keep doing from last night is I really liked not only their forecheck, which created both goals, but I felt like they were defending well on the breakout. I felt like at the offensive blue line, Ottawa was doing a good job of forcing good defensemen on the Dallas Stars to make bad plays. So if you do that against a veteran D-corps in St. Louis that does not have the same foot speed as Miro Heiskanen, for example, or Thomas Harley, I think you could really cause problems with the St. Louis Blues tonight.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely the approach the Ottawa Senators have to have. And Ross, you mentioned Timmy wasn't feeling great. If he's got the flu, the worst thing is to be on the road and you're traveling like crazy when you're sick and traveling with the team. They're on the same plane together. They're on the same bus to the game together. It's not like you don't really get that separation. So as someone that's battling the flu myself, I can have sympathy with Timmy, and hopefully it doesn't spread around the locker room too much, because this is kind of the season where it really hits people. And being on the road and playing back-to-back games when you're not feeling great, that's a tough task. And especially, Ross, they don't have any extra forwards, right? Because it's Matim Palo and JBD are the two extra D.
No, don't they? No.
Who's the extra?
Right. No, you're right. I believe that they're fresh out up front.
So if Timmy's still not feeling it, he's either got to battle through it or they got to go 11-7, which is not ideal.
Mattio's out of lineup as well, and yeah, they're just rolling with 12 forwards. Unless, hey, are we gonna go 11-7?
I mean that would be their option, right? But I don't know. I don't think that would be good for them here, because you're trying to get Zub into a normal rhythm somehow. We'll see where he ends up playing. And then having 7 defensemen, that just ends up having guys play completely off. And you have one guy that ends up playing like 8 minutes, which is not enough for a defenseman to get into the rhythm of a game.
No, that's fair. And we talked a lot about how the D-corps should shake out on last night's postcast. You can listen to that for a detailed version of how this game went. The worst effort, the worst energy on this road trip. And I think, in part, that's a good sign, because it's game 7 of 9 on the road trip. And they were 4-2 in 6 games going into last night. And even the Winnipeg loss that I was boots on the ground for, you felt like they deserved the better fate the way they played. But tonight, the return of Anton Forsberg. Let's get to our game day preview next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys know FanDuel is the official online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and it's also America's #1 sportsbook. And the NFL is wrapping up. Playoffs are almost here, but Week 18, you got some big games left, and new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on the over-unders, same game parlays, and finding some fun futures. You can also bet on which players are going to score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. And make sure you're checking out all the promos. They got profit boosts all over the place, so keep your eye out for those at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NFL.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the GLEBE Central Pub, our pub in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street. Head there for a place to share with friends and neighbors They've got wine, whiskey, drought, cocktails, spirits, and ales. They also have the Sens Shuttle, which will be making its triumphant return on January 9th when the Senators host the Buffalo Sabres. You can get all of your Senators Shuttle tickets for January and February so far online at the GLEBECentralPub.com. They also have great food, awesome drinks, and the atmosphere to match. They've got live music every Saturday night, including January 11th, January 18th, and January 25th at the GCP. Nothing gets me fired up like live music at the pub. They got their weekday specials, the soup and sandwich deal, all sorts of great community initiatives. And oh yeah, the vibes are free at the GCP. So head to 779 Bank Street and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. On a game day like today, you'll get 10% off your order by letting them know that you listen to Locked On Sens. So go to our pub at 779 Bank Street. It is the Glebe Central Pub. All right, Millsy, time to flush that performance last night, the 4-2 loss to the Dallas Stars, and move on to tonight, where it'll be another 8 o'clock puck drop. The Ottawa Senators finishing off their season series against the St. Louis Blues. Pretty fun first game between these two teams. 8-1. The Ottawa Senators beat the St. Louis Blues. Tim Stützle had 4 points that night. Ottawa had contributions from all over the lineup, including 2 goals each from Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle and Adam Gaudette. So 3 goal scorers with 6 total in that one. Thomas Chabot and Jake Sanderson, those are assists actually. Josh Norris and Noah Gregor had the 2 other goals in that game. That was one of our must-win games earlier on in the year, Pillsy. I think they'd been struggling going into that one. So what's your mood about the team heading into tonight's game?
Yeah, I think it's actually a bit of a good thing, Ross. I'll try to spin zone it in a positive way that they weren't happy with their performance, because that's going to make them want to come out even harder. And we know Brady Tkachuk gets up for games up against the St. Louis Blues, especially when it's in St. Louis. So I feel very confident that we are not going to see the same effort level and same performance from this team tonight.
Is it fair to say that Anton Forsberg will dictate the result of tonight's game?
I think the winner or loser of this game will solely be based on how Anton Forsberg plays, in my opinion. Like he is the most impactful player for the result of this game, because we have no clue what we're going to get from him, right? Like he's been downright bad most of his performances this season, but sprinkle in 2 shutouts in there as well. Like, and he's been injured for a while and we haven't seen him play. So I have no clue whether Anton Forsberg is going to be a leaky faucet tonight or it's going to be a valve that's fully shut and nothing's getting past him. Who knows?
Hopefully the time off was good for him. He hasn't had a start since December 8th. So he's almost gone a month now since his last game. He's had lots of practice time and he's rejoined the team now for the last number of days. He's been on this trip since the Christmas break, but in his last 5 games, he has 1 win and an .862 save percentage. You thought 13 shots was bad last night for Ottawa. Well, last time he played, he only faced 12 shots and allowed 3 goals. So
yeah,
I'm hoping for a great performance from Anton Forsberg. Wouldn't that be just what the doctor ordered tonight for the Ottawa Senators? He'll start in goal. Backing up will be Levi Merilainen. Really impressed by Levi Merilainen even last night. Just showing that maybe he's a full-time NHL goalie. And wouldn't that be a nice find earlier on in his development curve than you would think? So Merilainen backs up Forsberg tonight, we expect, unless there's a big surprise. And otherwise, the Senators not skating this morning, which means we will go with last night's line combos. Shane Pinto between Brady Tkachuk and Ridley Gregg. Tim Stützle between Adam Gaudette and Drake Batherson. Josh Norris centering Nick Cousins and Claude Giroux. And the 4th line features Zach Ostapchuk with Cole Reinhardt and Noah Gregor. On the back end, Thomas Chabot with Nick Jensen. Jake Sanderson with Travis Hamonic. Tyler Clevin with Artem Zub. Pilsy, your locked-on player to watch tonight.
Well, it feels kind of silly, Ross, not picking Forsberg after we just did that whole thing about how he's going to be the most impactful game player for the game for either team. But I'm going to go with number 2, Artem Zub. We talked about it in last night's postcast. It was kind of hard to get a read on whether he had a good game, a bad game, or what, or whether you keep him there or elevate him in the lineup. So I'm going to be looking at Zub and seeing, okay, how's he moving out there, Ross, especially with the broken foot. I know he's been wearing the regular jersey in practice for a bit here, so obviously he feels good about it, but I'm going to be locked on to him to really get an idea of where he's at, because if we can get Artem Zub back with Jake Sanderson, then we're looking at a true top 4 D pairing here, and that could be huge in turning around Sanderson's season and helping this team be better defensively as a whole.
I think that's well said, and I'm glad you took him because he could be a secondary impact piece after Forsberg, where it's like, where's he going to play? How many minutes is he going to play? Only 13 last night, well down from his season average. So he's eased into it now, Pilsy. It's just how confident will the coaching staff be to put him out there, shift in, shift out, and in situations with either Thomas Chabot or Jake Sanderson. I'm going to go with Tim Stützle. I was thinking about going with Brady Tkachuk. I like going with him in the hometown matchups, but Tim Stützle was downright bad and hurt the team last night with his giveaways and inability to get over the offensive blue line. He's typically a one-man break-in. He can get set up in the offensive zone all by himself. He did not have it last night. And for a guy who is so good with the puck to be so bad with the puck, you got to think that that's a one-off, and I'm going to be watching for his puck control on zone exits. I'm going to be looking for his playmaking ability, and the fact he had 4 points in his last game. That's a season high and a tie for his career high in the last meeting against St. Louis makes me think that if let's say Forsberg isn't at his best, we're going to have to get into a track meet a little bit with St. Louis, and if you are, Tim Stützle is going to be the most important piece to get goals and points for Ottawa. So I'll go with Timmy Superstar.
Yeah, let's hope he got his nighttime Neocitrin in last night and is feeling better today, because Ross, if Tim Stützle is not going, unfortunately, like Adam Gaudette certainly cannot drive a line by himself, and Drake Batherson, I don't think he can really drive a line by himself, but if he's playing with another player that's hot, he can really boost them. So if Tim Stützle's not on his game, I think that line is kind of going to be a 0. So we need Tim Stützle to get back to it.
Did you see the stat they pulled up last night on TSN about Tim Stützle and the top under 23-year-old players in the league?
Yeah, very impressive.
Super impressive. So here's the top 5 under 23 point scorers in the NHL this year. Connor Bedard and Logan Cooley each have 31 points. Dylan Guenther has 32. Lucas Raymond has 34. I always love when it's like all these guys bunched together.
Yep.
And then there's Tim Stützle. So let me repeat. Lucas Raymond has 34. Guenther 32. Bedard and Cooley 31. Tim Stützle has 40 points this year. He's 6 clear on the entire league in under 23 scoring. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, and that's Ross with him kind of cooling off a little. Like we could have rewound a couple games ago and still kept that stat, and Timmy would have been at 40 points, and the rest of them probably would have been a couple points fewer. So very impressive.
Super impressive. Now let's take a look at the St. Louis Blues. Here's what we expect to see lining up on the other side tonight, including a new member of the team who Ottawa has faced twice in the last month already. Frankly, he scored 3 goals for Ottawa, I believe, in one of those games. Cam Fowler with the Anaheim Ducks, but we'll get to that on the back end. Up front, a guy who wasn't in the lineup for the 8-1 loss against Ottawa earlier this year, frankly, their best player. Robert Thomas is centering the top line between Brandon Saad and Pavel Buchnevich. You got Braden Schenn with Dylan Holloway and Jordan Kyrou. Oscar Sundqvist is centering Jacob Neighbors and Zachary Bolduc. And Nathan Walker is with Alexei Toropchenko and Alexandre Texier. On the back end, it's Cam Fowler with Colton Parayko, Philip Broberg with Justin Falk, Ryan Suter with Tyler Tucker, and Jordan Binnington, Joel Hofer. Don't know who's starting in goal. Binnington played in the Winter Classic, and Joel Hofer was lit up against the Sens in the first meeting they played this year. Who's your lookout player to watch?
My lookout player to watch. Did you spill your coffee or did you catch
No, I clinked my coffee with my water bottle, but no harm, no foul. We're good.
Close call. I'm going with number 89, Pavel Buchnevich, Ross. He's one of those guys for me that I've always kind of had an eye on, and he's been a favorite player of mine around the league because he's got sneaky good talent, and he's a dual threat guy, and he has thrived ever since coming over to the St. Louis Blues. He's been there since 2021. In that season, he had 76 points in 73 games, and then he's followed it up with 67 points in 63 games. Bit of a down year last year, but it was a tough year for the Blues as well. 63 points in 80 games. Right now, he's sitting at 24 points in 37 games, only 9 goals. Ross, this guy can put the puck in the back of the net, and he's playing on that top line with Robert Thomas. He is a very dangerous player, in my opinion, and you got to be looking out for him. So that's what I'll be doing tonight.
Very good choice there. I'm going to go on the back end. And first and foremost, I just want to acknowledge the age on the back end for the St. Louis Blues. And they'll be the first to tell you they've drafted a lot of defensemen in recent years, and they're hoping that those guys will kind of naturally come in and help alleviate some pressure on this aging core. But like, Pillsy, they go out and get Cam Fowler. Even he's 33 years old. Justin Falk's 32. Parayko's 31. And Nick Leddy, who's injured, is 33. And Ryan Suter is 40 years old on the back end. So they're maybe not the most agile and mobile D-core, which is why Ottawa's forecheck is going to be such a big reason for any success in this game. Now, the two young guys on the back end, Philip Broberg in particular, he's having a great year after signing that offer sheet. He's 23 years old, has 14 points and is plus 11 in 26 games. So he's fitting in like a glove. And Tyler Tucker is just trying to stay in the league at this point. But he's a tough customer and can throw his body around a little bit. But I'm hoping that as a whole, Ottawa can get some pressure on that D-core. My lookout player to watch, though, is going to be Robert Thomas. Only 27 games this year after playing all 82 last year. He had a career-high 86 points last year, including 60 assists. He's already got 21 assists in 27 games this year. Just a heck of a player, man. Up and down the ice. He's 56% in the dot this year as well, so he's going to be a tough test for Ottawa going up against what I would imagine would be the Pinto line head-to-head if Ottawa gets a matchup.
Yeah, that's Robert Thomas definitely is the guy on this team, and him and Buchnevich as a duo, that's an elite pair right there. And going back to the D-core, Ross, it's kind of funny what the St. Louis Blues are doing here, because you mentioned it, a lot of them over 30, but they've got so much money tied up in their D-core. They have $34.8 million in defensemen. Compare that to 48.6 up front. Like, they're putting a lot of money into aging veteran defensemen, which was kind of an eyebrow raiser for me why they acquired Cam Fowler in the first place.
I would agree with that. However, Cam Fowler's been great since coming over here. He just played his 1,000th game in the National Hockey League in the Winter Classic. That's pretty cool. Get this. In Anaheim this year, he had no goals, 4 assists in 17 games. He's got 3 goals and 7 points, 4 assists in 9 games. And he's +6 versus -7 in Anaheim. Obviously, that's more of a team stat, but Cam Fowler, man, he's got the fountain of youth there in St. Louis.
Sometimes change of scenery is all you need. He had been unhappy in Anaheim for quite some time. I think he'd wanted to get out of there, so that's huge. And Ross, something we didn't mention, an omission from the St. Louis Blues lineup.
I was going to hit on that right after a break. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Rocket Money. Rocket Money can help you find subscriptions you forgot about, or maybe you're even paying for twice. I know that's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to Ross, and a few subscriptions you don't even know you're paying for, but Rocket Money makes it easy to track them down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions. monitors your spendings, and help lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. Brings everything together in one place: subscriptions, spending habits, and even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has helped over 5 million users and has helped save $500 million total in canceled subscriptions. It saves members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
All right, Billsy. Another thing I noticed when the Ottawa Senators last played the St. Louis Blues is they had a different coach. Drew Bannister was fired just 21 games into the season, and now 22 rather. And then Jim Montgomery comes in. He's 9-5-3 since taking over. So, I mean, those overtime losses making it look a bit better. That's 9 wins and 8 times where you leave the loser, but obviously those points still do matter. However, that's 17 games, Pilsy, right? Since he's taken over.
Yep, 9 + 8, 17.
Former Ottawa Senator Mathieu Joseph has 0 goals and only 1 assist in his last 18 games. He's -7 over that span, and he will be a healthy scratch expected tonight. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a little surprising, Ross. I think I was more of a Mathieu Joseph fan than you were. I really like his speed. He's a big player. He was good on the penalty kill. And I personally was shocked when the Sens had to add a sweetener just to dump his contract. I thought they would trade him for 4th, 5th round pick and just have it clean that up to get the cap space they needed. But I thought going to St. Louis was going to be a good landing place for him, especially when his brother was there. Now his brother is not there anymore, and Mathieu Joseph is a healthy scratch. This will be likely the 3rd game in a row. So that's tough for the St. Louis Blues, Ross, because he's signed for 2 more years, this year and next year. So, I mean, I thought it was going to work out in Ottawa. Clearly it didn't, and it's not working out for him in St. Louis either, unfortunately.
No, and that was the same problem he had in Ottawa, where he'd have a week or two where you're like, oh, I see it with him. The speed's always there, but you see the puck movements and being able to shoot the puck and score on breakaways and play well shorthanded. But he has 1 multi-point game this year, 2 other games with a point, and that's it. Other than that, it's been all zeros. He's on a 15-game pointless streak. And since head coach Jim Montgomery took over, he's got 0 points in 9 games, averaging under 12 minutes per game. He's just flat out not getting it done in St. Louis. So we'll see how that situation unfolds, but a bit of a surprise, but not a whole lot either for me.
Yeah, and Ross, you bring up a good point about the coaching change. Jim Montgomery is a good coach. It's kind of crazy that Boston decided that they needed to let go of him so soon. And what was it, Ross? 24 hours? When Boston fired him, St. Louis was like, okay, we're moving on from Drew Bannister and we're jumping on this opportunity to get him. And I think they gave him a 5-year deal right off the hop. They were not messing around when Montgomery became available. And as you mentioned, their season has really benefited and turned around since then.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he has strong connections with St. Louis, too. I think his wife's family's from there as well. So I think it was just kind of a perfect fit all around for Jim Montgomery, and he's doing a heck of a job coaching there with the St. Louis Blues. But hopefully not tonight. Hopefully Ottawa gets a win in this game. And look, last night could not have been better on the out-of-town scoreboard, considering the Senators lost the game. Not only the wild card teams, which if you're watching on YouTube, we're pulling up right now, but also the Boston Bruins are the only team that we're really kind of chasing outside of the wild card. The Boston Bruins lose in regulation. Tampa loses in regulation. Of course, Ottawa lost in regulation. Columbus loses in regulation. Philadelphia loses in regulation. That's all the closest teams for Ottawa lose in regulation. So tonight's where it's a big night because this is one of the games in hand, really, for the Ottawa Senators. You see all the teams right behind them. Ottawa has 2 games in hand on right now, except for Montreal, who sits 3 points back, and the Rangers, who sit 5 points back. But this just shows to me that Ottawa kind of dodged a bit of a bullet last night with everyone else losing, and then you're looking for Ottawa to do themselves a favor tonight. Pittsburgh, the only other team in action that we're going to be wary of, and they are playing in Florida. Panthers second half back-to-back, but they lost last night too against Carolina, I believe. Or New Jersey, Carolina.
I think Carolina.
They're going to be hungry, on the prowl, if you will, for the Cats. So Penguin soup on the menu, hopefully, but still, Ottawa's just got to help themselves at this point.
Penguin soup, wow.
Yeah, I don't think that would be very tasty.
Yeah. I don't know how else you would prepare a penguin, though. But the Ottawa Senators are cemented in that second wildcard spot. Like, how many days in a row is that now? Obviously, you look
at the counter out, raise the banner.
Yeah, you look at Christmas break and stuff like that, but it's been very fortunate and a nice, refreshing change of pace, Ross, to see the Ottawa Senators, albeit the last and final playoff spot of the Eastern Conference, but for them to have been there for a while feels good. And it's nice, Ross, to be like, we're looking at these teams chasing us, not just looking up at the standings all the time. So this is a good spot to be in, and I really hope the Ottawa Senators get the win tonight, Ross, so we can get back to 500 on the road. You want, like, obviously road games are tougher, but you want to be flirting with the 500 number, preferably on the right side of it.
And even though Ottawa's lost 3 of its last 4 games, the Senators are still tied with Montreal for the best record in the last 10 games for wildcard teams. So they're not losing ground despite the 3 losses in 4 games. And I think most notably, we kind of hammered out just that loss. Tampa lost in San Jose last night, Pilsy. Like, that is a big loss. We couldn't... No way the Sens are losing in San Jose. Sure, will they get outshot 39-12? Maybe. But they're not losing that game.
Yeah, and that was in regulation as well. So
it was. And they were pressing late. Hedman had to leave the game. He took a puck up high, and even still, like, they were pushing. Credit to Yaroslav Askarov, who was in goal for San Jose. He was awesome there. So we like that.
Absolutely. It's always nice when you get a little help from your friends, Ross.
And that's what the Ottawa Senators got last night. Hell, even the Buffalo Sabres blew a 5-3 lead with 4 minutes left in the game to lose to Colorado. So really only Detroit and Montreal have been winning games, and they dug themselves such a hole that we're not worried about those guys yet. The Tuesday game is going to be big, though, because if Detroit, look, it's still only 4 points. Everything is tight. But we are in the race, and that's all you can ask for. And we're being hunted, as Pilsy mentioned. So let's see how this develops. I can't wait for tonight's game. Last night, it was such a sluggish start. I was almost like, I had a bad taste in my mouth until those 2 goals in 24 seconds. Tonight, I'm going in at the anthem. The boys better be ready. It's a big game tonight. Ottawa, St. Louis. We will have the postcast for you after tonight's game. Any final thoughts on today's show, Pilsy?
Yes, Ross. Talking about chasing teams and standing watching, the Belleville Senators have a huge weekend coming up, Ross. They're up against the Syracuse Crunch tonight in Syracuse. Syracuse is the team that they're chasing in the North Division. Right now, the Ottawa Senators have 31 points. Syracuse has 35. Belleville Senators, rather, are 4 points behind Syracuse. But Ross, they have 3 games in hand. So let's see them get the win tonight. And then on Saturday, it's off to Utica to face the Utica Comets, the worst team in the division. But Utica's given them trouble in the past. So we need the Sens to get both of these wins here so that they can get back into 5th place in the North Division, because I want to go for another Belleville playoff run, Ross. Dream for me would be maybe I'll get an Airbnb in Kingston and I'm just going back and forth from Ottawa to Belleville for playoff runs. That'd be an absolute blast.
That's hilarious. With that said, though, good news is Matt Sogard's been sent back to Belleville, so he should be available for one, if not both, of those games this weekend. So can't wait to be following that. Tonight, though, it's an 8 o'clock start for the Ottawa Senators in St. Louis to take on the Blues. According to our friends over at FanDuel, the Ottawa Senators are underdogs in this game. Minus 105, though, so it's not a sure underdog.
Oh, weird.
But St. Louis is minus 114 on home ice. Senators are 19-16-2 on the season, and they sit in the second wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. Meanwhile, the St. Louis Blues are 18-17-4, which in the West is only good for a tie for the fourth spot in the wild card. So really important game for both teams tonight. We cannot wait to chat with you afterwards in the postcast. We'll chat with you then. For today, we say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and engaging with the show. It means a ton to us. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.